I'm waiting for this moment for a long time. I'm doing my digging into charts, into weird and sometimes dark charts or dark situation. I really like exploring people or situation or historical connections between transits, people, and so on. And there is one chart that I'm looking at for a few years. It was since I started my analyst training, this chart of this one of the one of the carriers of the channel of leadership, for good or bad, yes, Adolf Hitler. I started inquiring and digging into his chart when I was in the first year of the analyst training, and since then I'm doing it all the time. And I prepared this long ago, and I didn't find the correct timing to share what's going on this chart. And I chose today because Hitler has the channel of judgment in the third line as a combination of his two moons, which I find really interesting. So I will talk to you a little bit about this interesting chart. I have so much to say, but I just try to put it in a small presentation, not to overwhelm and not to do an analysis here. But there are some things that pop, and we can see them just pop to our eyes, and we can see the beautiful way that the program displays itself. And yes, it is beautiful. Beautiful is not bad or good. It's just the way the program displays itself. And for me, that I grew up in Jewish Israeli home, where my mother and my father had connection to the Holocaust, and parts of the families were killed. I was born, I was raised with this energy, and in Israel, you are raised in this energy. Depends on the where your parents came from, but it was a huge part of my growing up surrounding. And for me, it was very healing to look at this completely from a non-personal way of looking at the program, and it really helped me to see that it's just a display of the program. And a good friend of mine also said that what happened with the Nazi phenomena is actually a very good example of one part or one aspect of the cross of planning. So it is interesting to watch this. So let's look at it. First of all, the cross of wishes that tries to bring new order into the old values, and has this fantasy to change the world for the better. And it is about the collective and the bringing mutation into the collective and the tribe. Very, very interesting. And this is really what his manifesto design was designed to do. Now, let's see. The first thing is, of course, the gate of influence, the 31st gate. In detriment, in the first line in detriment, the line is called manifestation, and the detriment says the unusual expression of leadership. And this was it. It was unusual expression of leadership. And we can see that the channel of the Alpha is connecting this design Earth manifestation with two activations in the 7th gate, the gate of the army, the role of the self. So we had the unconscious role of the administrator and the conscious role of the authoritarian. And then let's look at the other parts of the cross, the 41st gate, the coolness or the hot-headed, the gate of fantasy, the drive to begin new experiences. And this was really interesting to see the way it was changing between the coolness of a splenic manifester and the hot-headed that lost it every time, again and again. Now, the personality sun, victimization, the courage to stand by one's convictions, or where victimization leads to appeasement and suffering. And we know that he was suffering, but also he caused a lot of suffering. And again, it's not him, it's the whole situation. We will look at this. But his design was the initiator of many things. He's a manifester, so he could initiate situations and process. The 50th gate, the gate of values, consistency. When in the fifth line, consistency. When continuity has brought success, it should not be tempered with. This is the lesson of this line, and the two sides. The conservative awareness that basic principles should not be abandoned casually, or when effectively stimulated, the drive to rebel against basic principles. And we know that Hitler had these two sides in him. Another interesting thing, the line, the very famous line, which is now in our Neptune, in the transits, the 37th gate, in the fifth line, the 37th is the gate of friendship and the gate of the family. And in the fifth line, it is called love. And here we see the display of the detrimental side, dependency turning love into hate, which is very, very interesting. Emotional dependency turning love into hate. And this is his unconscious mass, immature, unconscious energy. And another interesting thing is to look at both his Plutos are in the 20th gate, at the gate of the now, in the fifth line, in detriment, realism, where reality creates dissatisfaction and adds to instability. And it's very interesting because we are going to talk about, about dissatisfaction, okay? So this is the most unique thing that I noticed, and since then I always see when people have a channel, a definition that is made out of both their moons, it's very unique, and I look at it, it's very, very special. And here it is so special because the whole channel is in the third line, and the 18th is in detriment, the zealot in detriment, an obsession with correction that does not bring satisfaction. And 58 is the gate of the joyous, very interesting electricity, the energy to fuel independent stimulation. So he was actually fueling his own obsession. He didn't need it to come from the outside. He had this electric drive to correct in a very, very strong way. Of course, trial and error, bonds made and broken, anarchy, all the attributes of the third line are in this, and both his moons, I mean, he's a manifester, and this energy of correction went straight to the throat with the possibility to manifest this. And it's a design of insatiability, and he was insatiable. He was an insatiable zealot about clean house. His nodes are also interesting. The unconscious nodes, the 62nd gate, routine, yes, in the first line, routine, the ability to transcend the boredom of routine through a rich and daring fantasy life. And this is, again, all the details are connected to one another. Fantasy life with the gate of fantasy that sits in his cross and drives him into experiences. Yes, he wanted to experience something in a very emotional way. And of course, the 61st gate, occult knowledge in the first line. Yes, the individual pressure to know the unknown and potential madness. And if you read about his history, his younger years were full of very interesting and mixed inspiration from people that had all these extreme point of views about racism and stuff, and he just took it into his open head. And because his life were really difficult in the first in the first years as a child, as a young man, and this open ego that of course was feeling not good enough, so he was just eating mentally all these ideas that he came from the quarter of initiation, so he was here to fulfill himself through mind. So if the food of the mind wasn't controlled, or let's say discerned by strategy and authority, then this influence was really the thing that drove him into doing what he did later, or initiating what he initiated later. And of course, the conscious nodes, the gates of deafness, gates of provocation and struggle and fighting. The 39th, the troubleshooter, the natural gift for solving problems, unbelievable. The energy to provoke others by attempting to solve their problems, amazing. Or the emotional drive to dominate that provokes others. Both sides you could see from the environment and, of course, from him. And the 38th gate, misunderstanding in the 6th line, opposition without basis. This is the lesson in the stubbornness to face opposition with or without basis. So, and we can see his this pressure from the open head and the pressure from the very defined root. These two pressures could really drive him to places that we know he went. Another thing is his two Mercuries. We know that he had a very defined throat. Two channels are coming to the throat, and of course a motor. And we see his voices. I think based on facts, I am here, I am aware now, I contribute, I lead. Very, very strong. And his two Mercuries, the conscious Mercury, nurturing, the power to share the process of growth with others or not. And he, of course, shared the process of what he thought is growth. And 13 in the 6th line, the optimist, the ability to accept any limited interaction as a necessary step towards greater union. But this is in detriment, naivete, the belief that mutual interest can be projected on others. So he really thought that he's doing a favor to humanity. Oh my God, he shared this process of growth with all of us this way or another. Of course, we see the open centers, doesn't know when enough is enough, needs to prove that he delivers and that he's certain of his opinions, and avoids confrontation with the truth. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but a little bit. Another very, very interesting fact that I found, I didn't look only at his chart, I looked at all the people from the Nazi headquarters that I could find. Really, I think like 10 people I looked at, all the names that are with him all the time and were there in building the Third Reich and all this. So it's interesting, a few facts. First of all, when a few of them together, the penta was usually defined or almost defined. So these are very strong penta people. Also, most of them are left angle and a few are 5-1 as Hitler was. All of them except one, and I'm also counting Eva Braun, which was in the background, his woman, and her chart really supported him. It wasn't official, of course, but energy does the work. We don't need words, we need the energy, the chart. So all of them, except one, were open ego. And this is very interesting because the drive of the open ego was so hard with all these people. This was the drive that to prove and improve this way or another. Very interesting. Now, the only one who was defined in his ego, and this is so interesting because I didn't know I will do this presentation when the 48th gate is going to be in the sun. But look at this. The only one with a defined ego among these people that surrounded Hitler, the only one is Heinrich Himmler, which was the executor of the final solution. And look at his design. He's designed the 48 in the fifth line, action in exaltment, the sun, the natural urge to apply energy to action, a taste for action. And then we see the earth, objectivity in detriment, the 21st gate, the gate of control, biting through the hunter in the fifth line, in detriment. The drive for elimination is so powerful that objectivity is related purely to cause and not to effect. The ego, whose willpower is applied subjectively. This is really, really interesting. And of course, look at this manifesting channel from the ego to the throat. He was really a material executor. But now, when we look at the connection chart between Hitler and Himmler, this is really interesting. Look what's going on here. The stream of taste completely from the root until the throat. All the integration, the channel of the beat. By the way, many people that surrounded Hitler had the whole channel or gate 14, which gave the energy to his direction because he brought the vision of the direction in the second gate. And I think it's twice in his design. Yes, you see both Venus and Mars are in the second gate, and many around him had the 14th gate. So you see an example here, the channel of the beat, of course, and a lot of pentapower. You see this is only two people. The moment another comes in, then the whole penta is already defined. The channel of transformation, emotional impact, love of humanity in the extreme, yes. We have this 15th gate in Himmler's Neptune. This is really eye-opening, and for me it was very, very eye-opening because I was asking myself all the time when I was a child, because I grew on these stories and I read a lot about the war and about the Holocaust, and it was deep in my energy. So I wondered, as a projector, I asked myself, how could that be that one man can do such a thing, and how could it be that people are hearing him and doing as he says? And this is really this question about the leadership for good or bad. And of course, what I got the answers from human design. This is the only place that gave me the mechanical answers, and I completely got it, that first of all, Hitler was not the cause. I mean, Hitler by himself, one person by himself, even if he's a manifestor and he's very powerful, he can't do anything unless there is the right connection. And by checking all the people around him, I could really see how the penta gets very strong, how what channels are formed, and there is a very strong influence of the group. And of course, the timing is very important because the whole program provides the energy, and the cross of planning is a very good background frequency for something like that. And when we are not aware, when we are just a herd of killer monkeys that just waiting for some kind of authority that will come from the outside and will tell us what's good for us, then a group of people, with very talented group of people, can do this. And that's what they did. And all the other people around, they supported it, and they were afraid not to support it. So just mechanics. It couldn't be prevented. We can't prevent it unless we are in our strategy and inner authority. We can't prevent ourselves from being part of groups and going with the flow of the group unless we are anchored in our uniqueness. And this uniqueness is really mechanical. It's not about thinking differently, because people can think differently and would not have the power to stand on their own. They will just be immersed. They will be sucked into things. And even people that were that resisted everything that happened there couldn't do anything. I mean, there were here and there people that risked their lives and blah 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 and say no, but they were really such a small minority, and this is because there were no self anchor in these in people. So we have here in human design such an amazing opportunity not to be swallowed by these swamps. These are swamps of collective energy, of collective homogenization that can take us from ourselves in 1 minute. And when there is such a powerful group like what happened in the Nazi, I forgot the word all the time. I forget the word in this party, the Nazi party. They had a lot of power. They were very determined, and they slowly but surely took advantage of the timing and drew everything and sucked everybody into their dance. And then the dance got very, very big, and that's it. You have no control anymore and no way to keep yourself from being part of this. So it just shows me, first of all, that nothing can be done with this program. Just we look at this program, it does what it does because we are part of the program. Each one has this chart. We are part of the program, as Hitler was a part of the program, an aspect of the human experiential way. This is it. There are things like this in the program. But for us individually, each of us, when we are anchored in our type's strategy and we are navigating through our inner authority, and of course we sleep alone in our own aura, then we are not being driven away from ourselves by this program. It doesn't matter which aspect of the program we are talking about, the transits or people, not self-people around us, it's all the program. So that's it. It was something I really wanted to share, and I did now. So let us have an interesting neutrino week and anchor ourselves in who we really are. Bye bye.